Hi, welcome to Clubs and Culture for 12/30/2018. We're approaching our year mark for Clubs and Culture, and I'm amazed I've kept it going this long, even though I basically abandoned most of my plans. Anyway, so we're up to 1972 for the Best Pictures, which is The Godfather. Now, as a point of reference, I'm going to do part Godfather, and then Godfather 2 is also a Best Picture, though they weren't back-to-back winners. There's The Sting in the middle of them, so I'm going to actually skip over The Sting and then come back, then do part 2, and then probably some commentary on part 3 in the same video, then cut back to The Sting. This is a legendary film. And I actually want to spend most of the time talking about sort of my reaction to it and how sometimes this happens, because it took me initially 3 times trying to get through this film. The first time is I just wasn't connecting to the material. As you might have been able to tell, I don't particularly like crime movies per se, and this is like the excuse the pun, but it's like the Godfather of all the crime sagas. I don't know, for whatever reason, crime stories I always feel too plot driven to me, as if the plot is like the main thing. And so I actually was mostly bored with The Godfather until like my 5th time trying to watch it, and then I finally connected and I end up really liking the film. Admiring the film. The film is still admirable to me, not so much likable. And it also brings up, this notion of... So my point about that is just because a film is well crafted doesn't mean everyone will end up liking it. That there's sometimes it's just this world of Italian mafia and then sort of a big family is just sort of alien to me, because I'm not Italian American. I'm also not from a big family, etc. And while it's sort of like a metaphor for American capitalism, or just a critique of American capitalism with a big family venture, it just never really fully connected to me. Now, the other thing I want to mention in relation to this is exactly what you should... Now, I would have... If you define Best Picture as the film you enjoy, like if you're thinking about this as a voter, and who should you vote for? If you say you should vote for the film you enjoyed the most, there was under no circumstances would I ever vote for The Godfather. I would have voted for Cabaret, which is a musical that came out from the same year, and Cabaret has the distinction of having won the most number of Oscars without winning Best Picture. It won 8 Oscars, including director and editing, which are 2 of the awards. And I think in any other year, Cabaret would have easily won, and would have been this huge winner. But unfortunately, The Godfather came out. Now, if you define Best Picture as film you enjoyed the most, I would vote for Cabaret. If you define Best Picture as picture that is the best crafted, I would reluctantly agree to The Godfather. And it's actually, in my mind, very, very close, because the screenplay for The Godfather is much better than Cabaret, but Bob Fosse did direct. I mean, Coppola didn't direct the film badly, but there's a lot of actual newer director issues. So like some scenes are slapdash together, like the hospital scene in The Godfather. Then you also have like some of the action stuff, like when Sonny is beating up that guy where he clearly punches the air at some point. And like that. And so the movie has a lot of little tiny flaws that don't really affect it, but Cabaret is just perfect. So there's that. Anyway, but then if you define Cabaret Best Picture as like the most socially relevant, that also becomes a really tighter story to me, because Cabaret, the movie, is actually about what we're going through now, the death of liberal democracy because of having frivolity and being frivolous, which, you know, that's much more social relevant today than The Godfather's crime saga. Anyway, The Godfather did win 3 Oscars. It won picture, screenplay, and Best Actor. Though Marlon Brando famously sent a woman to pick it up from him, and everything like that. And then also Al Pacino, who's actually the protagonist in the movie, was forced into the supporting acting category, which is nonsense. And it was just unfortunate. Anyway, let me run out the trailer and clips. See you in a second. I feel like I'm rambling. Okay, so the movie, if you've never seen it, is a punitive plot. It's about a mafia don who has a deal goes sideways on him, so he has an assassination attempt, and then his middle son has to step in. Michael is the character's name, and run the family business. And Michael was a war hero, and the movie's all about him basically having a violation of his father's wishes of having trying to escape the mafia lifestyle, and then him becoming the Don. The horse's head is probably the most famous scene in the film. And it also has a family drama about a father, Vito, and then there's 3 sons: Sonny, who's a hothead; Michael, who's cold and calculating; and Fredo, who's emotional. And Michael's the youngest, and so that's why he was sort of groomed to leave the family business, but he ends up taking it over. And now again, it took a long time for me to connect to this film because I'm not really all that interested in crime stories. And the thing that I think that finally got through to me about this movie was simply how authentic and the details feel. And you really see this in stuff in the wedding sequence where they're throwing those sandwiches around, or the girls are standing on young girls are standing on old men's feet to dance. It's very obvious that a lot of the makers of this film are Italian or Italian American, and there's a lot of actual Coppola family in it. So if you don't know this, his sister is actually Connie, and then his father Carmine does a lot of the not the score but the scene music. This is the scene I was talking about where the fighting's not very good because sometimes he's clearly punching air, right there. And anyway, so I really like it. I think it works as a good punitive plot. My sort of main reason why I only end up giving this a 9 out of 10 is I don't feel like Michael Corleone is punished enough. In fact, I don't feel like he is get punished enough into part 3. And so because of that, this film, the criticism that it glorifies the mafia, I don't fully accept it because it doesn't present it as a fully undeniable lifestyle, and also it's a critique of American capitalism, so there's obviously that edge, but it's not fully done like it's supposed to, because it's not as full formed into part 3. Okay, so now this is the famous moment, opening of the film, and this is the Undertaker, and he's talking about how his daughter was almost raped and assaulted by 2 American guys, and he's come to the Don to get vengeance, specifically to have the Don kill him. And of course you have the interplay of this being a dark room at the wedding, which is all light. The dark underbelly of the world is juxtaposed with the whiteness, literally the whiteness of the wedding. Is that now I'm showing it for 2 reasons. One, that line, "I believe in America," which is the first line in the movie, and I don't know if people remember that, and because the movie actually has a fairly straightforward critique of American capitalism that pops up every once in a while, where the Corleone family is sort of the American story, but they're also murderers. which is, not exactly the best thing, because you have that line, you have Michael line with Kay where he says, my father's no different than a president or a senator or a CEO, and then you have the line at the mafia meeting towards the end where it's like, well, at least we're not communists, etc. And then, like, in part 2, you have them literally cutting up the island, which I might show. Anyway, so the other reason why I'm showing this is, believe it or not, this is actually the most technically difficult shot in the entire film. It took them like a half a day to do it, because this slow zoom out was new technology at the time, because it was sort of robotic and programmable, and so it's a very almost imperceptible. Now, the reason for that artistically is you're trying to orient in, or like, it's a way of being ushered into the world, and there's something very, very seductive about how the camera is set up, where it's sort of inverse from the normal scene, where it goes from close up to medium to wide, which is the inverse of master cutting, which makes the mafia world seem very, very seductive, and immediately makes you understand why this poor guy, because he didn't get justice for his daughter, would go to see mafia leader. And in this sort of zoom in and out actually is usually used in this film on big critical moments of character arc, and so, like, this is the sort of the main introduction of the world, which is why it's used. And then the next scene I'm going to show is going to have it's similar to with Michael. I gotta say this, Marlon Brando does real. I think this is actually his career best performance. He's so perfectly cast, and I can't believe the studio fought with Coppola on that point. Anyway, so this is the scene I'm talking about, where they're gonna have a sort of a similar zoom in on Michael, which is the other reason why I was showing the opening scene. And this is the scene where they're discussing about how they're going to respond to Vito being attacked, and Michael's going to recommend them just taking out the cop and the Turk. The repeated camera move that's coming up right here is, again, because it sort of goes it goes actually into master cutting, where it's wide, then medium, then close up, and the whole point of it is Michael's a good man becoming bad, and he doesn't keep his honor, to reference the other scene. And this is here's the move right here. We're just going to slowly start drifting in, and it's such a powerful visual motif that's used in this film. I actually think it's these zooms work much better than, like, the orange thing, because oranges in the film are often associated with death or violence, and everything like that. And anyway, so I think it's a much more powerful thing. And then there's something, and so, like I was saying, this is, again, the movie is ultimately sort of a punitive plot where it's a good man becoming bad. But the story, as it works, is Michael, in the context of the story, sort of he wins everything by losing his soul. Like, that's the point of the film. But especially since at the end you have Kay watching and the door sort of shuts on her. But I don't know if people fully understand that point, because a lot of people are like, yeah, Michael Corleone, great guy. Okay, so now the other reason, the last clip I want to show you is right here. This is towards the end of the movie. That's Anthony, Michael's son, Vito's grandson. And he has an orange in his mouth, and they're just sort of playing. This is probably one of the most famous. The horse head has to be the most famous scene. This is probably the other super famous scene. It's also my second favorite scene in all of the trilogy. And I don't know how much of part 3 I'm going to show, but I'm definitely going to show the other scene that I'm referencing here. If you follow the story, Vito as a guy also sort of has a punitive story, but it's nowhere near as severe, and he's not as corrupted as Michael is. And so this is his death scene, and he's There's something very, because this film is all, he became a mafia guy to protect his family. So there's something poetic about Vito dying, and he has at least one family member there who actually represents Michael, who's his favorite son, while also being the next generation because it's his grandson. So it feels very correct. Anyway, so that's going to be it for Clubs and Culture. For today. Again, I have a hard time dealing with The Godfather because the film's well crafted, but I don't necessarily connect to it the way other people do. Anyway, I'll see you in a sec.